Get that grumpy old man out of here. He just yelled at me for asking if he wanted cream in his coffee. Emily's voice was sharp, irritated, trembling just slightly as she stormed into the break room. The other servers paused, startled by the intensity in her tone. She pulled off her apron and slapped it down on the counter. "What happened?" asked Jasmine, frowning as she wiped her hands on a towel. "That old man at table 6, Emily hissed, jerking a thumb toward the dining room. "He snapped at me, called me girl, and told me I was too slow. I don't care how old he is, he doesn't get to talk to people like that. He's just a lonely, regular," Jasmine said gently, "always comes in, orders black coffee and oatmeal. Maybe he's having a bad day." Emily shook her head. "No, I worked here long enough to know the difference between a bad day and being plain disrespectful. I'm not serving him." Outside the kitchen, in the corner booth, the old man in question sat hunched slightly, a brown coat over his shoulders despite the warmth of the room. His face was worn, skin lined with time, blue eyes clouded but still piercing beneath shaggy white eyebrows. His hands, rough and calloused, gripped the ceramic mug like it was a lifeline. His name was Walter, and today was not just a bad day. Today was the anniversary of something he never spoke about, something he carried in silence. And now, at 84 years old, silence was often the only companion he had. Emily came storming out again, headed to the counter. "Jasmine, can you please take over his table?" Before Jasmine could respond, Walter's voice rang out from the booth. "Well, are you coming back, or do I need to teach myself how to make coffee too?" Emily froze. "Excuse me." Walter glared from his seat. "You heard me, young lady. I've been waiting here 10 minutes. This isn't the Ritz, but service used to be better." Emily clenched her jaw. She marched up to his booth and stared him down. "You know what? Maybe you'd get better service if you treated people with a little respect." Walter looked up slowly. His voice dropped to a growl. "Respect? Don't talk to me about respect. You think you know the world because you carry a tray and smile for tips." Something snapped in Emily. "I work double shifts to pay for my dad's medication. I smile because I have to, and I carry trays because I refuse to beg. So yeah, maybe I don't know everything, but I sure as hell don't deserve to be insulted by someone too bitter to say please." Walter's mouth twitched, but he said nothing. Emily turned and walked away, furious. The other customers pretended not to notice. The buzz of quiet conversations returned, but the air was thick now, heavy. Jasmine approached Walter's table cautiously. "I'm sorry about that, Mr. Harper. Can I get you anything else?" Walter didn't look at her. No, she was right. "I'll finish this and leave." He did, but not before leaving a $20 bill under the empty mug and a torn photograph tucked inside a napkin. Later that day, as Emily was closing out receipts, Jasmine handed her the picture. "What's this?" It was under Mr. Harper's coffee cup. "I think you should see it." Emily unfolded the napkin. The photo was old and creased, black and white. A group of soldiers in uniform, smiling, standing in front of a helicopter. In the center was a young version of Walter, arms slung around a boyish man, tall, strong-jawed, with kind eyes that Emily knew all too well. Her heart stopped. It was her father, in his early 20s, grinning beside the man she'd just snapped at. Taped to the back of the photo was a note written in shaky cursive. "Your father saved my life in 72. I saved his in 73. If not for him, I'd be long gone. I come here every year on this day because it was the last time we spoke. I didn't mean to be cruel. I'm just old, and I miss him." Emily dropped into a chair. Her hands trembled as the room blurred. Her father had spoken of the war, but only in pieces. Only when the nightmares came. He never gave names, never talked about the people. Just pain and silence and a single story about a friend who pulled him out of wreckage when the sky was on fire. Walter. She ran outside into the parking lot, heart pounding. "Mr. Harper," she shouted. The parking lot was nearly empty. A lone sedan was pulling out onto the road. "Wait," she cried, sprinting after the car. "Please." The car stopped. The driver's door opened slowly. Walter stepped out, puzzled. "What is it?" Emily ran up to him, breathless. I didn't know who you were." That photo, my dad. Walter's expression softened. You're Jack's girl. Emily nodded quickly, tears springing to her eyes. I'm Emily Jensen. My dad. He passed last year. Walter exhaled like the wind had been knocked from his chest. I'm sorry, he whispered. He was a good man. A damn good man. Emily swallowed the lump in her throat. He talked about you, not by name. But, he said someone saved him. Said he never got the chance to say thank you. That it haunted him. Walter looked down at the cracked pavement. We were trapped under a burning Huey. He pushed me free before the whole thing went up. We were young. Too young. After the war, we rode for a while. Then life got in the way. I started coming here on April 6th, because he once said he liked the smell of fresh coffee in spring. Emily wiped her eyes. I was so rude to you, Walter chuckled weakly. I was worse. It's hard. You know, getting old. Everyone you love is gone or far away, and all you have are memories. Would you come back inside? Emily asked gently. Please. I want to hear more. About him. About you both. Walter looked at her, and for the first time that day, he smiled. A real smile. He nodded. Back in the diner, Emily made him fresh coffee. She sat across from him, pen and notebook in hand. Walter talked, slowly at first, then, with the ease of a man unburdening decades. He had this stupid joke, Walter said, laughing. If you can't run from the blast, befriend the medic. And he was the medic. Emily smiled through tears. That sounds like him. He kept me alive more times than I can count, patched me up when I got shrapnel in my leg. Even sang to distract me. Can you imagine? A 6-foot soldier humming Let It Be while pulling metal from your thigh. The other waitresses watched from a distance, silent. Jasmine approached quietly. Everything okay? Emily looked up. Yeah, actually, better than okay. Walter stayed until closing. Emily walked him to his car. As he got in, he paused. You remind me of him, you know. That fire, that backbone. He would have been proud. She choked on her response. Thank you for saving him. Walter started the car. He saved me too. The engine hummed as he pulled away into the night, tail lights fading slowly. Emily stood alone under the street lamp, holding the photograph to her chest. She would never forget that day, and every year after. On April 6th, Walter returned. But this time, Emily had his coffee waiting. Black. No cream. Just the way her father liked it, and the way the man who saved him did too. The next morning, Emily came into work early, earlier than anyone expected. She opened the blinds herself, turned on the warm yellow lights of the diner, and set a clean white mug at table 6. In it, she poured black coffee. No cream, no sugar. Just like Walter and her father preferred it. When Jasmine arrived an hour later, she blinked in surprise. What are you doing here? You're not on the schedule till lunch. Emily smiled. A quiet kind of smile. I couldn't sleep. I needed to be here. In case he comes back, he might not. Jasmine said gently. He will, Emily said, her voice steady. And if he does, I want him to know this place isn't just some diner to him anymore. It's home, just like it was for Dad. By mid-morning, Walter returned, slower today, leaning a little more on his cane. When he saw Emily behind the counter, already walking toward him with his coffee, his eyes lit up. I didn't think you'd be here, he said. I said I would be, Emily replied, and I meant it. He sat, groaning softly as he eased into the booth. Your father used to tease me about my knees. Said they'd give out before my mouth did. Emily chuckled. Sounds like him. They sat together for an hour before the lunch rush began. Emily stayed close, returning between orders to hear more. Walter talked about the letters they used to write, the medals Jack refused to wear, the time they snuck a dog onto base and named it Sergeant Biscuit. He wasn't just a soldier, Walter said, staring into his mug. He was a friend, and the kind of man who knew when to talk and when to listen. God. He listened. He saved people just by listening. Emily nodded, eyes wet again. He used to do that for me, too. Even when I was a teenager screaming about boys and school and wanting to dye my hair purple. Walter laughed out loud, surprising even himself. Did you do it? Oh, yeah. Looked like a grape for 2 weeks. He grinned, the wrinkles at the corners of his eyes deepening. He must have been so patient. Too patient, he said. Let her try everything once, except skydiving and heroin. The bond between them grew with each story, each laugh, each silence they shared. Emily, for the first time since her father's passing, felt a little less hollow, like some invisible thread had been tugged back into place. As the days passed, Walter became a fixture at the diner, always at table 6, always black coffee, always greeted first by Emily. Some days, they barely spoke, just shared glances and warm familiarity. Other days, Emily brought her father's old journal and let Walter read from the pages, watching tears quietly trace down his cheeks as he remembered moments he thought he'd lost. One rainy afternoon, Emily brought something wrapped in brown paper. What's this? Walter asked. Open it. He carefully peeled back the paper and gasped. It was the photo, the one he'd left behind. But now, it was in a frame, a beautiful, handmade wooden frame with a plaque engraved beneath it, Brothers by Blood, not birth. Walter's hand trembled. Where did you get this done? My cousin's a carpenter, Emily said. I wanted you to have it. You gave it to me when I needed to remember. Now I want you to keep it so you remember. He never forgot you either. Walter blinked several times and looked away, swallowing thick emotion. You're too kind to an old grump like me. You're not a grump, Emily said with a smirk. You're just battle-worn. They shared a laugh, and for a moment, it was as if the years between the past and present collapsed. There was no war, no death, no regret, just a waitress and an old man, healing together. Then, one Tuesday, Walter didn't come in. Emily checked the time all day. Her hands were restless, her mood off. She called his number. No answer. She tried again that evening. Still nothing. She barely slept that night. The next morning, she clocked out after breakfast and drove to the address he'd once scribbled on a napkin. A small house with peeling white paint and a crooked mailbox. She knocked. No answer. Just as she turned to leave, a neighbor called out, You looking for Mr. Harper? Emily turned. Yes. Do you know if he's okay? The woman walked over, concern creasing her face. He fell 2 nights ago. Didn't have his phone on him. He's at Mercy Hospital now. Room 208. Emily was there within the hour. Walter looked pale, frailer than she'd ever seen him. But when he opened his eyes and saw her, he smiled weakly. I was hoping you'd come. Emily sat at his side and gripped his hand. I was worried. You should have called, he chuckled. Too stubborn, and didn't want you to see me like this. You saved my dad's life. You're not allowed to be stubborn around me. They talked for a while. Emily told him about the regulars asking about him, about how Jasmine almost spilled hot soup on someone trying to balance 3 trays. He laughed, though it turned into a cough. Then his voice grew serious. There's a box, he said, in my closet, labeled Jack. Emily furrowed her brow. What's in it? Things I meant to give him. Letters. A medal he refused to accept. I kept it for him. For someday. But that day never came. I'll get it, she said softly, and I'll read them. Every word. Walter closed his eyes. Thank you. He was released a week later. Emily picked him up herself, bundled him into her car, and drove him not to his house but to hers. You're staying with me until you can walk across a room without wobbling, she declared. Walter protested weakly, but she'd inherited her father's stubbornness. Her apartment was small, but warm. A guest room became his. She made soup, brought home books from the library, set up a small record player and let him pick old jazz albums. At night, sometimes, she'd find him asleep in the armchair, Jack's framed photo in his lap. One evening, Walter handed her a letter. It was yellowed ink, faded, dated 1974. She opened it. It was addressed to her father, Jack. They sent me home, said I'd done enough, but I don't feel done. I feel lost. You were my compass out there. You gave me something to believe in, something to fight for. You talked me out of ending it all more than once, and I never thanked you the way I should have. I hope one day we meet again. And I get to look you in the eye and say it. Thank you for saving me. Your brother in arms. Walter. Emily pressed the letter to her chest, sobbing. I wish he could have read this, she whispered. Walter nodded. Me too. Then, one bright morning, a few months later, as spring returned and the coffee at the diner brewed rich and warm, Walter didn't wake up. He passed peacefully. In the room filled with light, holding Jack's photo in one hand and the medal in the other. At his funeral, Emily stood before the small crowd, holding the framed picture of the two young soldiers. He wasn't just a veteran, she said, voice clear despite the tears. He was family. He saved my father's life, and in the end he saved mine too. She placed the photo beside his casket, and beside it, the medal. Every year after, on April 6th, Emily visited the diner. She poured 2 black coffees, one for Jack, one for Walter, and she sat at table 6 alone, but never lonely, listening for the echo of laughter, the murmur of old war stories, and the soft, silent promise that love and sacrifice never truly die. Months passed. The seasons shifted. Summer arrived, bringing with it long days and golden light. But for Emily, something inside her had changed forever. She was no longer just a waitress. She was a keeper of stories, a guardian of memory. Walter's passing had left a silence in the booth by the window, but not an emptiness. People still glanced at table 6, as if expecting to see him. Some even asked, "Where's the old man with the cane?" And Emily always smiled and told them, "He's still here, just quieter now." It was Jasmine who first suggested the idea. One quiet afternoon, they were closing up early due to a power outage. Jasmine leaned against the counter and said, "You know, we should put something permanent there, a plaque or a photo." Emily looked toward table 6. The booth sat bathed in afternoon light. "I have the perfect picture," she whispered. The next week, a new frame appeared on the wall above the booth. Inside, it was the black and white photo of Jack and Walter, side by side in front of the helicopter, grinning like boys who believed they'd live forever. Beneath it was a small brass plate that read, "For Jack and Walter, brothers by sacrifice, heroes by heart." The customers noticed. Some asked questions. Some left quietly in thought. One man, a veteran in a faded cap, removed it, pressed it to his chest, and saluted the photo before leaving. But it wasn't just about honoring the past. Emily wanted to do something more, something living. So she did. She used her tips, her savings, and a donation drive she started on social media to launch a local scholarship fund in their names, the Harper Jensen Memorial Fund. Its mission was simple: support veterans returning to school, or children of veterans pursuing healthcare careers, just like Jack had done before enlisting. Within 6 months, the first recipient was announced, a young woman named Talia, daughter of a Marine, studying to become a trauma nurse. Emily cried when she read her application. Talia's essay was titled, "Why My Father Calls the Medic His Guardian Angel." When she met Talia in person, she hugged her like family. Because that's what they all were now. Family. A year passed. April 6th came again. The diner had changed in small ways. New lights, a fresh coat of paint. But table 6 remained untouched. Emily arrived early that morning, just as she had the year before. She brewed 2 black coffees. She placed them at the booth, opposite one another. She sat in silence for a long time, gazing at the picture, remembering the first time she'd yelled at Walter, how he looked at her, not with cruelty but pain, the way his voice had cracked when he said her father's name. She touched the rim of the mug across from her and whispered, "I miss you." The bell above the door jingled. She looked up. An elderly man, wearing a military cap and walking with a careful limp, stood awkwardly in the doorway. He spotted her and smiled. "Are you Emily?" She nodded, surprised. He approached slowly, pulling something from his jacket pocket. "I served with Jack and Walter. I saw the article about the scholarship, and I knew I had to come meet the girl who brought their story back to life." Emily stood quickly. You knew them?" The man nodded. "Name's Frank. We were all there the day the helicopter went down. I watched Walter pull your dad out with fire behind him and bullets overhead. I never told anyone Until now. He handed her a photo. Another one, this time in color. It was blurry, a bit faded, but clearly showed Jack, Walter, and Frank in a hospital tent. Jack was bandaged, grinning. Walter sat beside him, holding a half-melted chocolate bar and looking proud. Emily stared, tears brimming. I didn't even know this existed. Frank smiled. I figured it was time it belonged to someone who'd care. She invited him to sit. They drank coffee, shared stories. Frank wept quietly when she told him about Walter's final weeks. He never forgot, Frank said. Never stopped talking about Jack, even when he was stationed in Germany or stuck in the hospital back home. Said Jack was the best man he ever knew. Emily took his hand. So were you, she said gently, because you kept this memory alive. That summer, Emily expanded the memorial wall. It wasn't just Jack and Walter anymore. It was Frank. It was Sergeant Biscuit. It was the names of others who had served with them names. Emily learned one by one, reaching out to families, listening to their stories, collecting their memories like pearls. The wall grew, so did the scholarship, so did the community. Veterans came from all over to eat at the diner, some just to sit at table 6, others to leave patches, medals, photos. One woman left a letter from her late father, who'd served under Jack. She wrote, "Because of him, my father came home. Because of you." His story still breathes. 10 years later, Emily stood outside the diner, watching the ribbon-cutting ceremony with tears in her eyes. The mayor shook her hand. Local reporters snapped photos. Behind them stood the new Harper Jensen Community Center, built on the same block where the diner still stood. A space for vets to gather, study, heal, rebuild. Inside, on the main wall, was a full mural Jack and Walter, painted in brilliant color, surrounded by others in uniform, their faces glowing in a field of sunlit memory. At the center of it all was a quote from Walter, which Emily had once scribbled in her notebook during one of their last conversations. "We didn't fight to be remembered, but if we are, let it be for the way we lived." Emily stood before the mural and whispered, "You are remembered, both of you, every day." From behind her, Talia, now a licensed nurse, placed a hand on her shoulder. "Come on," she said with a grin. "There's coffee inside." Emily turned and walked with her into the future, stronger, braver, and never alone. And every year, on April 6th, at the diner, with the old jukebox and the fresh coffee smell, a young waitress, sometimes a new face, trained by Emily, sets 2 cups of coffee at table 6. Black, no cream, and beside them, a folded photo of 2 young men, smiling in the sun, unbroken, unforgotten, forever brothers. It was a rainy Sunday in November when the letter arrived. Emily was sorting through a pile of mail at the counter in the diner, most of it junk, some bills, a thank you card from a recent scholarship recipient. When she saw it, an envelope, thick parchment, handwritten. The return address said, "Point Us Department of Defense Archives." Her heart skipped. Inside was a formal letter, and beneath it a declassified transcript, a mission report, Vietnam, March 12, 1973. It described a helicopter crash behind enemy lines. 2 survivors, 1 unconscious medic, pulled from the wreckage under heavy fire by a fellow soldier, identified as Corporal Walter James Harper. The final line hit her like a wave. Had it not been for Corporal Harper's intervention, Sergeant Jack Jensen would not have survived the blast. His bravery is hereby acknowledged, posthumously, with recommendation for citation. Tears welled in her eyes. They'd finally acknowledged him. 50 years too late, but not too late for her. She photocopied the transcript and framed it beneath the photo at table 6. Customers paused more now. Some read it aloud. Some took pictures. Many stood in silence. Word spread. News channels picked up the story again. This time, it wasn't just local. CNN, NBC, even a feature in the New York Times, how a waitress preserved 2 veterans' legacies and sparked a national movement. Emily didn't want fame. She didn't care for the attention. But she knew what mattered. Walter and Jack were no longer forgotten names buried in dusty files. They were honored, celebrated, alive in story, song, memory. Indeed, one afternoon, a young boy came into the diner with his father. The boy wore a paper hat, cut to look like a soldier's helmet. He approached Emily nervously, holding a handmade card. Inside was a drawing, two stick figures smiling. One had J on his shirt, the other had W, and in the middle was a heart. "Are they in heaven?" the boy asked softly. Emily knelt to his level and nodded. "Yes, but they come down sometimes. When someone does something kind, or brave, or when people laugh really hard at breakfast." The boy smiled. "Then they must be here a lot." They were, especially in the laughter, especially in the coffee steam curling in the morning air. And then came the day Emily had always known would arrive but still wasn't ready for. Her last shift at the diner. She stood behind the counter one final time, looking out over the tables, the faces, the space that had shaped her adulthood. She wasn't leaving in sadness. She was passing the torch. The new manager, a veteran herself named Rochelle, had started as a dishwasher years before. She adored Walter, cried at his funeral, volunteered at the community center every week. Emily knew the diner was in good hands. She handed Rochelle a key and a notebook. Inside were stories, customer favorites, scholarship recipients. Every April 6th, menu item. And at the very back, a single photo taped in, Jack and Walter, aged by time, but still strong, seated at table 6. Beside it, Emily had written, "This place isn't about coffee. It's about connection, about people like them, people like us. Make sure no one ever sits here alone." Rochelle nodded, eyes shimmering. "I promise." Emily walked out into the sunlight, pausing once to look back. She saw a couple sharing a booth, a little girl coloring, a man reading under the framed picture, and she smiled. Walter had once told her, "Legacy isn't medals. It's what people do because you existed." She finally understood. Years later, Emily stood before a classroom of high school students, invited to speak about service, memory, and history. Behind her was a screen showing the mural of Jack and Walter. She held up the faded photograph, the original, black and white, worn by time, priceless. "I used to think I was just a waitress," she said, "but one rude old man, and yes, I said that to his face, taught me that every person has a story, and that some stories change everything." A student raised her hand. "Did he really save your dad's life?" Emily smiled. "Yes. And then, in his last years, he saved mine." They clapped. Some cried. Afterward, a student approached her. "I lost my grandpa last year. He was a vet. No one talks about him anymore. But now I think I want to learn." "You should," Emily said gently. "That's how they stay alive." She passed him a flyer for the community center. He took it reverently, like something sacred. On her last night in the old apartment, the one where Walter had once stayed, where memories still lingered in the walls, Emily lit a candle, brewed 2 mugs of black coffee, and stepped out onto the fire escape. She placed one mug beside her, held the other, and looked up at the stars. "I hope you're sitting together now," she whispered. "I hope there's good coffee up there." A breeze brushed her cheek, the warm kind, the kind that feels like an embrace. She smiled and sipped. Epilogue. Every year, the Harper Jensen Foundation honors 10 new students. Every year, veterans across the country send in their stories written on postcards, recorded in old cassette tapes, or typed by grandkids. Every year, on April 6th, diners in over 30 cities pour 2 black coffees and place them at reserved booths under 2 simple words, "Never forgotten." And in a quiet corner of a little town, in a diner where the jukebox still plays old songs and the windows let in golden light, there's still one table where people speak in hushed tones, where strangers sit across from memories, where a grumpy old man and a gentle medic live forever, side by side.